This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 960, recorded on Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. What's love got to do with science? I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we will fill your heads with love songs, man parts, and how to do better at dating. Maybe just relationships in general. But first, thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. We don't know what love is. We know there are hormones involved, that love is not lust, but both are a must. We know that relationships require trust. But we still don't know if this thing that we feel, that drives, that lives inside each and every one of us, is truly something, the thing that makes us human, divides us from other earthly beasts. Is our heart to blame? We've learned it's more likely our brain, but still we can't reconcile this emotion that connects us and sometimes breaks us and rejects us, and what we know about the pieces and parts that are physically us. Science keeps digging. Poets keep spinning. The stories and songs we are singing, but love, it's only a beginning. For this week's episode of This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science, everyone. Welcome to this episode of This Week in Science. Happy Day of Science. Happy Valentine's Day, as that is the day that we are recording this show here in the United States in the Pacific time zone. It's a different day for different people. Some see today as Ash Wednesday. Some are celebrating different things. Some are avoiding it entirely. But really, thank you all for joining us for this moment in time so that we can talk about science. And yes, I'm running with the love theme related to Valentine's Day with a bit of science news and what I really do think will be a fantastic conversation about the importance of science in our lives. Maybe it's a sonnet for science. I'm not into like the, rhyming doublets and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, my guest for tonight, neuroscientist and science communicator, Dr. Allison Coffin. You might remember Allie from TWIS a few years ago when we did a live show here in Portland, Oregon. And Allie and I have been working together for a very long time on a number of things. And Allie, just thank you so much. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good to be here in our respective basements on this cold and wet Valentine's Wednesday afternoon or evening. And we have been working together for a long time. People might think that we look different, but when you see us both running around conferences sounding about the same or other events, sometimes people get us confused.
And sometimes think that we're married, which...
That's true. We've also had friends think we're married. I guess it is Valentine's Day. I love you dearly, but we are not married. You're just not quite my type.
Yeah, we have our own respective partners, but we do have a good time together.
Exactly.
Because of science.
Right. But just, I caught your bit at the beginning about like sonnet for science. Just don't expect me to come up with a sonnet on short notice.
No. But I mean, if anyone listening right now has that inside of them, please do share. I'd love to hear, read.
Hashtag sonnets for science.
Ooh, I like that. This is like a good new social media campaign. I'm excited about this one. Okay. All right. As we jump into the show tonight, I do want to remind everyone, who's listening right now, who's watching right now, that if you're not yet subscribed to This Week in Science, you can find us all the good places that podcasts are found. And if you're interested in the science podcasts, go look for This Week in Science. We also live stream, like we're doing right now, this very moment, Wednesday evenings, 8 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. If this is a lot of information and you don't want to remember all of it, you can just find all the stuff at TWIS.org. But now it's time to jump into the science. You ready, Allie?
Definitely. Some of the stories you've got coming up are stories that I'd already read a bit about this week, and some of them I know nothing about.
so we can talk all about them.
Given that I'm giving a talk next week about dating in the animal kingdom for the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry Science Pub, I'm going to get some extra material. So those that are local and are coming out next week, you might hear this twice.
And if you are local, another point, OMSI has been nominated for one of the best science and technology museums in the United States. So if there's voting, and I've got my fingers crossed. I love the OMSI.
That's very cool. Yeah, very excited for them. They're well deserving.
And I didn't know you were speaking there next week. Maybe I actually need to leave my house.
You might. It's a Tuesday, not a Wednesday. So you could do that and TWIS. Both things are possible without winding up in the multiverse.
Oh, it's not even having to be parallel realities.
No, it's not. It's serial realities with an S, not a C, although cereal is good too. Yeah.
With oat milk, soy milk, regular milk, lactose-free milk, whatever you like. Anyway, let's get into the science. Some people might be at home right now eating their cereal and listening to this or watching this show, and it's Valentine's Day, and people get reminded of it, and they're like, oh, people, relationships, dating, and there's a lot of people out there who are attempting to find a relationship on online dating sites. And on those online dating sites, you try to show your best self, right? This is the stuff I'm interested in. Look at how great I am. I'm going to be the most exciting person that you'll meet. I have these qualities. Look how good I look. The best pictures possible. You try to make yourself look special because being special is what you find important. But everybody thinks that's important. And so in this study that was published just recently called Feeling Known Predicts Relationship Satisfaction. Yeah, on Valentine's Day or at work or with your family or whatever. This all applies. Researcher Juliana Schroeder, who has been looking into how people relate to each other and appreciate each other and get really into relationships. Her paper works. It looked a lot first on like online dating profiles, but this is not all it connects to. This is a research project that has been in the works over a decade. So it's been
That's hard to be funded.
Published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology. They've been investigating how well people think they know other people, family members, partners, friends, compared to how they felt known, and then to rate their relationship satisfaction. And more often than not, people think they know people better than other people know them. And what Dr. Schroeder says is that this is what's called asymmetric insight. And there's another aspect to this where people, they go to the doctor And they want the doctor, their physician, to be an empty vessel. Nothing but just to know them and feel their pain and know what they're going through. And so the researchers were wondering if this is more generally represented in society. And through the experiments and the scenarios that they presented to many people over the last decade, what they've found more often than not is that people take a piece of information, one little piece of information about somebody and go, I know you. But that's not the same for them feeling known. And so when it comes to the dating profiles on the online websites, yes, make yourself look special. But at the same time, there's a part of getting out there and letting people know that you want to know them, that you're interested in who they are. Not just...
That's sort of like networking 101 advice, right? Is ask questions of others, get to know them.
I mean, I would think so. And you and I both work in science communication, and so much now it's like, it's not about the message that you want to convey. It's about what people need from you and how you can help them in that.
Right. And about connection.
Yeah. And about connection. So it might, I don't know, it might just be who we are as humans. I'm not sure, but if you really, really, really want your online profile to pop and have a Valentine's date next year, get to know people. Let people know that you care. And caring is a big, and compassion and feeling and knowing other people isn't the same as just knowing that they windsurf, or for example.
Or that they fish, unless thinking about one of my friends where he's an obsessed steelhead fisherman. And if you know that he's an obsessed steelhead fisherman, you know like 70% about him.
Exactly.
Right.
But okay, obsessed steelhead fisherman, he's spending his time getting up early. He's going out on the weekends. He's doing these things. Like a lot of his life revolves around his boat or going out to places in nature where these fish are, or there are things. You can have those conversations, but...
So he wishes he's actually a scientist. Studying human hearing. So he's like in like the lab and at the campus most of the time just thinking about fish. But total aside, right? So yes, usually get to know multiple aspects of people. I totally agree with that advice.
But that goes into the whole, well, you're at work, you know this person who is a scientist, and if you didn't go deeper, you wouldn't know that they were into steelhead fishing. There is learning more about who the people are. And this seems like basic human interactions. Like, why do we need to tell you about this?
I think there was a point in time, and this might be me showing my age or just me thinking that things used to be different, but I think there was a point in time when, without all of social media, that there was more back and forth human interaction of actually getting to know people better. And there's a lot of research around loneliness in this country now that's showing that getting to know people better is often the treatment for loneliness. So I think what you're talking about with this study about these online dating profiles and everything really taps into a much deeper issue that's really at the forefront of society.
Yep. Absolutely agree.
But let's not talk about loneliness. It's Valentine's Day. Let's talk about, like, I don't know, chocolate or...
Ooh,
coming up later or something. Or stingrays. Let's get to stingrays.
Pregnant stingrays. Let's talk about that one.
Yes.
So this stingray named Charlotte She's at the aquarium and shark lab in North Carolina. She hasn't been around any other male stingrays for about 8 years. She's in North Carolina. She is really, really far away from where she came from, which should be around Southern California. She shares a tank with maybe some shark species, and there have been some stories and headlines that are like, ooh, stingray Charlotte got pregnant by a shark. No.
Yeah, I've got a background in fish
No.
biology. That's a little too far removed now. Like, there's some similar anatomy between a male stingray and a male shark, but yeah, I don't see that happening. So, all right, what happened? What happened to Charlotte?
So we don't know. They discovered that Charlotte was eating more, and she was looking a little thicker, and they just were like, okay, what's happening here? And then they realized that she was pregnant, and they estimate that she's pregnant with as many as 4 pups and will give birth in the next 2 weeks. But they don't know how it happened. So there are questions about whether or not this is parthenogenesis, which is that she's been alone for a very long time, and this is in fish, some reptiles, some other species. This phenomenon does occur in which females can have eggs divide in such a way that it leads to offspring. It's like internal cloning almost. Yeah. The other idea is that, and we know that from some shark species who are related, that and also I think in some octopus species as well. So I don't know. There's these these kind of edge case stories where females have held sperm for a very long time until the conditions have been right to give birth. So we don't know what's going on here, but the hypothesis that everybody's really more prioritizing is that it's parthenogenesis. There's some cell involved that a female's egg has fused with, and so there's an embryo that's happened. They don't know why. They don't know. She's been without males for 8 years, and this is super rare, but also very exciting.
Parthenogenesis has been reported before in aquarium shark species. And like you said, stingrays and sharks are related. They're all elasmobranchs, so same taxonomic group. So my money, if I was a betting person, would be on the parthenogenesis angle. And the really cool thing about that is that you can actually test that scientifically, right? So you can like sequence the DNA and see if all of it really does represent a clone or even just a few key genes. If they all look exactly like the genes from the mom, then from Charlotte, then you can really say, yeah, this was parthenogenesis. Whereas if there's some weird genetic recombination going on that isn't just from mom, then maybe she stored sperm for years and years and years and years. Not really sure why she thought this time was right then. So yeah, I'm banking on parthenogenesis.
I think, I would guess that's what I would bank on as well. I hope that they do eventually do genetic studies to see whether or not that's the case and see how how the relations are with the F1, F2, how it all works out. But I do agree with that the parthenogenesis is the most interesting, fun angle to explore in this. And it's also just so exciting to investigate even further in multiple species and try and figure out what are the situations where parthenogenesis takes place, what kind of species it can take place in, the why, where, when, how. You answer all the proximate and ultimate questions about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was talking to an aquarist or staff member at the Sydney Aquarium in Sydney, Australia, a couple of months ago when I was there. And she was telling me about reports of parthenogenesis in some captive sharks in aquaria around the world. So yeah, this just fits in with, again, some of the data. But yeah, if there are any geneticists listening out there, or like, hey, David Schiffman at Why Sharks Matter,
Yes.
why don't you come your buddies together and get some money? Like, somebody should sequence this.
That would be a great study. Yes. Have there been cases of human parthenogenesis? I'm not going to go into that right now. I mean, especially since it's Ash Wednesday. No biblical references. But anyway, let's move on to love songs. Do you have a favorite love song, Allie?
The first thing that came to mind was I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor. So I don't know if that counts as a love song. Love Shack, B-52s, like, come on, you know me well enough. I am like one of the least romantic humans ever. If I was to like look back on like my high school and college self, were there sappy love songs I associated with guys I had crushes on? Yes, and I would be mortified to even think of any of those. So we're going to go with no, and instead my song is Shut Up and Dance by Walk the Moon, because forget love, let's just dance.
Just Dance.
Exactly.
David Bowie has a good, that was a good Bowie song.
True. But yeah, and any favorite love songs or least favorite love songs? Well, let's go with favorites. Least favorite could take all day.
This is not a love song.
That works.
Yeah. Okay. We're so romantic here.
Yeah, clearly. Well, I mean, we're also like talking to each other on TWIS, which is amazing, on Valentine's Day, while each of our partners are remodeling our respective houses.
It is really the language of love.
Hey, baby, I love you. I'm going to go paint this wall. Okay.
Okay, this story is about the love songs of a species of primate called the Skywalker gibbon.
Are they Jedi?
They're kind of like Jedis. I mean, they're endangered, extremely endangered. Their scientific name, Hulak Tianxing, which I am probably not getting the Chinese pronunciation correct for. But these endangered gibbons have been thought to be isolated to very specific areas of China, and they thought that the numbers of the species were down to less than 200. But what this new study out of UC Davis has found is that there are a whole bunch of populations in Myanmar that they discovered through setting up listening devices, so recording devices out in the wild, that were basically waiting for these sound, the hoots and the hollers and the love songs of the gibbons. The gibbons were singing their songs, and usually they can't cross rivers. It's like the rivers are like, nope, not going to go there. So they're isolated by geography and how the land and the rivers interact. This study, published in the International Journal of Primatology, is the first to show that there are many more groups. In fact, the lead researcher, Tiara Smiley Evans, who's faculty with the One Health Institute at the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, says they genetically identified 44 new groups of Skywalker gibbons, which is a huge increase from where they thought these primates were.
How many gibbons live in each group? Like, what's the social structure now? I have like all kinds of questions.
I have so many questions too, and so do they. So they know that there are a lot more of them than they actually thought, but the numbers are still very low considering that there's ongoing hunting, there are limited protected areas. There's also political unrest in Myanmar. So it's not, these gibbons don't have it easy. But the researchers really, what's so exciting, these acoustic monitoring systems were able to get the solos of individuals and also duets So when they started singing back and forth and also together with each other, and then they found plants that the gibbons had chewed on. And since the gibbons had chewed on the plants, they were able to genetically identify individuals in these various populations. So they used environmental DNA of chewed plants to enable them to find this new distribution of this very endangered species. And who knows? It's very, I don't know. The eDNA, have you done much in the environmental DNA?
I haven't done anything with it, but I mean, I know a lot of it. I have a lot of colleagues that especially are sampling more aquatic habitats, right? So a lot of it used to be that if you wanted to know what species of fish or whatever were in a river or a stream, you went out and you collected a bunch of them, you stuck a net down. And these days it's amazing. You can collect a water sample. I hadn't heard of the chewed leaf thing before, but you collect a water sample or, some chewed leaves and you can figure out who's been there. This is also now getting me concerned that because I occasionally throw leftovers off my back deck into the woods behind my house as the original form of composting for the coyotes and things and raccoons in our neighborhood.
We have to support the ecosystem.
Right, but at the same time, if somebody can come along and be like, ooh, who chewed on this? And find my DNA intermixed with a raccoon or something. Me, well, raccoon wasn't really a raccoon, right? Thinking Guardians of the Galaxy, but all right, who's been eating this, chicken bone?
I think that they have the ability to differentiate, the identifying markers of humans and raccoons enough.
Oh, I'm sure they can. It's more that they might think we were passing it back and forth.
Want a bite of this? I enjoyed this.
I sat down to a meal with the raccoon. Right. Well, maybe not all bad. But anyway, back to the gibbons.
Yeah, so it's very exciting. There are a lot of questions that they have yet to answer. And the big hope is that because now that they know these populations exist in these places that they didn't know before, that they can create new protected areas. They've proposed protected areas. Of course, this is going to take political and cultural, societal cooperation to see it through. But, in doing this, it would save a species of primate. And we do know that primates are kind of, they're one of the species, or many of the species in ecosystems that when they start disappearing and dying off, it's showing that there's real trouble in the ecosystem. Because if the ecosystem can't support primates, then it's not going to continue to support all the things that are necessary to support us.
Right. And if the primates aren't there to chew the leaves, then the leaves get carried away. And just massive shifts in who's eating what and living where and hanging out with whom. So yeah.
I always want to know who's hanging out with whom, but not necessarily be there to hang out with them.
Right in the middle of the hangout.
I know. So what happens to you, Allie, when you are set free? Somebody opens the door to your lab and lets you out. They say you don't have to stay in the lab anymore. You can go out. Do you change your behavior of who you hang out with and what you do?
Not really. I mean, what you see is what you get. I'm pretty much me all the time. Do I try to not curse too much in the lab or when I'm teaching? Yes. But otherwise, it's pretty much me. I was just at a conference last week, the Association for Research in Otolaryngology. Big word, basically means we study ears and a few other bits, but mostly ears and brains, hearing things, down in Anaheim. And I mean, yes, that's still me surrounded by scientists, but that's literally my favorite week of the year because it's great science and it's meeting like it's seeing some of my best friends that I only see once or twice a year. And then the last night of the conference every year is what's called the hair ball, because we have little cells in our ears that are hearing cells called hair cells. No idea who originally came up with the name. Obviously, it conjures up images of cats coughing things up. You and I both have cats. We really don't need to deal with any more hairballs.
That's immediately where I went, and I was like, this is not a party I want to go to.
No, but in this case, it's just like a massive dance party. And myself and some of my closest friends are always the ones in the middle of the dance floor that get it started. So basically, when you let me out of the lab, I'm in the middle of the dance floor, but often still with a bunch of scientists or whoever. Like,
or whoever.
Dancing.
You're not a mouse, obviously.
No, I am definitely not a mouse. I'm too big and loud and stompy to be a mouse. I don't even know if that's a word.
I wouldn't say you're stompy. No.
Grumpy. Forceful. That's only in the morning before I have coffee.
Just gotta get you the coffee. You're forceful. You're strong. It's good.
Thank you. That's also a nice way of saying, yeah, I have a forceful grip and I break things in the lab. What happens in the lab? Yeah, I'm really good at breaking stuff. But anyway, I'm not a mouse. So you clearly have a really interesting story about mice. And I will give away the title of Female Freedom. So tell me more. What's up with these mice?
So it's a big question in research. Are the things that we're studying, these model species like mice, really doing the normal behaviors when we keep them in cages that they would normally do? And if you're studying brain and behavior, if you're studying hormones, if you're studying the way animals work in the world and are trying to relate it somehow to humans, there's a whole question. Like, we used to only study male animals and male people and all this stuff. And then suddenly they're like, we should really start including, not just lumping males and females together, but start separating them out, just different genders, to try and figure out if there's differences going on. And it was just too complicated for people a long time ago. And so
until NIH and other places started requiring it, because they're like, no, really, female animals are not just like male animals with estrogen. Like, hormones do all kinds of things and behavior is different. And yeah, female humans are not just male humans with more boobs. Like, no, there's differences. So
very big differences. And I worked on birds. We would get wild birds, bring them into the lab, and the area that the research is ethology. It's like you try and make a lab situation as much like the real world as possible. It's still not real, but anyway, you're trying to do that. In this particular case, a study published in BMC Biology, researchers at Cornell University were like, let's take genetically cloned, there's strain, not cloned, but they're uniform, the strain of mice, C57BL /J6J.
Black 6J. Yep.
These are mice. They used to be house mice, but now they are a strain of mice that is pretty much genetically all the same. And so in the labs, everybody's been like, yeah, males and females, it's all right, it's all good, they do the same. We see what males do and females do. And then the Cornell University researchers went, what if we let them out?
That's usually a researcher's worst nightmare, because suddenly you're like, crap, the mouse just ran through the hallway and I recognize the strain. We have a problem. Okay, so did they just literally open the door to the mouse cages and be free, run around the lab, or what did they do?
They made an outdoor enclosure, so it was very.
That makes a lot more sense.
It's big, a large size, much larger than the normal mouse cages that are in laboratories. The researchers looked at the differences in the male and the female behavior. And it looked at how the mice determined their social structures, how they formed their social structures. And in the study, they found that male mice let out into this enclosure act just like the wild type mice. So like if this basically the house mice that this strain of mice had been taken from originally, the males were like, yes, okay, I go out, I do the male thing, and it's all the same as the other males. Females, however, in the laboratory situation, they very often tend to be very social. They hang out with their sisters. They have these social groups. They engage in a lot of just very close social behaviors. But the females in this experiment acted very different than the wild type and from the males. So when they were let out into this large outdoorish wild-like enclosure, instead of hanging out with their sisters, they were very random about their interactions. They became exploratory. They became territorial. They started because resources were not necessarily always going to be available to them. They started acting in a more competitive manner. They didn't work as cooperatively. The females in this outdoor free living system, they had social structures in it all. They did set up social structures, but it was very different than how they acted when they were in the laboratory situation. So I think this is one of those examples of, and it was also different from the wild type females as well. So this is an example of what is really happening with the genetic strains of the animals that we're using as our model behavioral systems or for those studies, and what situation are we putting them in, and how does that situation actually relate to the questions we're asking and the results that we're getting.
Yes. And how just by studying mice in a lab, we can't learn everything about everything.
Oh, we've cured cancer in mice so many times. We've done all these things. We've got mouse lives saved so many times over.
And it's been super useful. There's so much we can do with mice. It's just that's not all there is.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is not all there is, but I think it's a very interesting study,
Yeah.
Instead of keeping the animals in, let them out and see what happens and see how it differs and what's going on.
Scientist, as a university scientist, just imagining the paperwork that you have to do to go from our mice are in cages and they're like, yep, check, your mice are in cages, to we're sticking them in these big outdoor enclosures and the animal care staff is going to flip.
Yeah. No, thank you. What?
Just all of the forms they had to fill out to even stick the mice where they stuck them. That right there is a tour de force, regardless of what they got.
Yeah. All right. Since our male partners are off,
we're going to talk about male parts.
Yeah, tearing apart house parts. We're going to talk about male parts right now.
Yep. Actually, I already mentioned this study to my husband the other day. Yep.
So, there is an issue as males age with sexual dysfunction, where erections are not as reliable as you age as you hope they would be. We've got all sorts of wonderful
cross-section of somebody's erection that looks like a really weird angel with a bird face on top.
Yeah, so right now I'm showing an image taken from the study of a cross-section of a mouse penis.
I'm still saying mouse penis looks like a somewhat surprised cartoon bird. It's got the arms things and the head up here.
Oh, what?
Yes. Okay, but at any rate, back to mouse erections.
Okay, so Uh, a lot. People have known for a very long time some of the issues related to maintaining sexual function as men age, and there have been a lot of neurotransmitters like noradrenaline that have been involved. People study vascular constriction or relaxation to see how the blood vessels. There are heart medications that are sometimes used. There all sorts of stuff that's trying to figure out how to help men have more and better erections longer into their lives.
No, not just help men, but help whoever they happen to be with as well. Like,
Right. Well, yeah. I would like more studies related to how women age and how we can do. Yeah, anyway, well,
yeah, back to the study.
Back to the study focusing on men. The bottom line of this study is erections beget erections. When an erection occurs, it stimulates the production and the action of fibroblasts in the penis, and those fibroblasts impact the erections that occur. So the fibroblasts are basically these mediators between noradrenaline and the widening of blood vessels. And those fibroblasts stop working as well as you age. So the bottom line is, hey, wow, we didn't know this. When you have an erection, it works your fibroblasts and there's more and then more erections. So more erections lead to more erections. Fibroblasts are abundant, but this is a mouse study. And yeah, exactly. David, on YouTube, use it or lose it. That is the bottom line for this particular study. Yes. This you can read more about it in The Conversation, which is a fantastic scientific resource where researchers talk about their work and make it very available to people. The study, yeah, it's free, which is really wonderful. But the study was published in Science. Corpora cavernosa fibroblasts mediate penile erection.
In the stack of science magazines sitting on my kitchen counter right now that I still need to get to.
Yeah, you'll get to it eventually. My goodness. This is This Week in Science, everybody. We are running through the show right now, and I just want to remind you that if you enjoy the science that we bring to you on a regular basis, please head over to TWIS.org and click on the Patreon link. You can help us continue to do the show by your financial support. You can choose your level of support on a monthly basis, $10 and more a month, and we will thank you by name at the end of the show. There's also a Zazzle link where you can go and buy merchandise that is related to TWIS. Some of it is art that Blair has created herself. There's a calendar, 2024 calendar, that's available currently, all art by Blair. All sorts of neat things there, but really share the show. If you know somebody who needs this science discussion in their lives, tell them about TWIS. Can't do it without you. Thank you for your support. All right, going to come back right now because I told Allie that I didn't want to keep her all night long, but I do want to, but I can't because she has work to do. Because
yeah, I was going to submit a paper to a journal tonight, so that'll just happen.
Yes. Time to reintroduce my guest tonight, my co-host. Get into the real meat of this show with Dr. Allison Coffin. Allison is a neuroscience professor at Washington State University, Vancouver. Her lab focuses on mechanisms involved in hearing loss and repair. She's the president of the Association of Science Communicators, where I've been working as well and had the privilege of working with her for the past several years. We work together to help support the science communication community and have a conference every year called Science Talk, which is coming up. And I think Friday is the last day for early bird registration if people are interested in that conference. And Allie's been interviewed on the show before, like I said, during our live program, and we've talked about Allie's fish hearing cell research and other work that she's done. But tonight, it's Valentine's Day, and we can talk more about your hearing research and what you do. But I mean, I want to take this opportunity to get intimate. Like, why do you love science?
I know that you talk in your sleep sometime because we've slept in separate beds in the same room. How much more intimate do you want to get, girl? That's what happens when you invite me on short notice. And we just lost our host.
Nobody else knows that.
Oops.
You've been waiting the whole show to say that, haven't you?
It actually didn't even occur to me until just now. You're like, let's get intimate. And I'm like, Yeah, we've roomed together at conferences.
Yes. Yeah. So, but when we come down to the question of the research that we do, that you do as a researcher, why? Is it a love? Is it like a passion? Is it like, would you send your science a Valentine?
I don't really send anybody a Valentine, but if I was going to send Valentines, yeah, I think it would. Actually, what I would do, and I'm not just saying this, is if I was going to send anyone a Valentine, which to be honest is like way too much work these days, it would be to not the scientists, but the scientists, to the people that are working in my lab, the graduate students, the undergraduate researchers, the technicians. Like, for me, a lot of it is the love of the science, but just as much is the love of sharing that science with others and seeing especially early career scientists, so students. Look, there's my lab. That's our lab logo. We've got some zebrafish going on. Yeah. But, I need to change that. That still says Science Talk. That is super old. All right.
Time to update your website.
I haven't updated the lab website in a little bit, people. So we'll get that working. But no, so much of it is about the scientists themselves and the students that are thinking about careers in science. So to me, that's really where the Valentine goes. Like, I love the discovery. I love being the first to know something, but, and that's not me being like, oh, I'm the first to know, like I'm the smartest person. No, it's simply like having a question, being like, I wonder, and going, I can figure that out. And especially I can work with others to figure that out. For me, science is very collaborative, and it's really about the mentoring and seeing people move on that I love the most.
I think that's something that is often overlooked, and I think it's been discussed more regularly over the past several years as we've seen larger and larger groups of scientists coming together in efforts to take on big projects and questions. But the historical idea of a scientist is like this one person, usually a man. Yeah, one person who came up with an idea, and that is them, and that's it.
And that's not always, but often complete BS.
Yeah.
Like, are there some people like the lone scientist in the lab or like at the whiteboard or back in the old school days, like at the chalkboard, like tearing their hair out and coming up with a great idea? Yeah, like that's totally happened. But so much more of it is the collaboration and the exchange of ideas and the supporting the next generation of scientists. Like, I was talking about this obsessed steelhead fisherman friend of mine. We met at a conference when he was a graduate student and I was a postdoctoral researcher. So that period in between, like finishing your PhD and, in my case, being fortunate enough to land a faculty position. And over drinks at this conference we met at, he had this idea for this steelhead project, even though he was studying human hearing. And he's drawing me little diagrams on the back of a cocktail napkin. Yes, that actually happens sometimes. And we published the paper a couple of years later. And it was a group of us. That wasn't just he and I. We brought like 4 more people into the project. And it was super fun and involved getting steelhead from different hatcheries in the Pacific Northwest and eating pizza and having drinks over trivia as we were coming back from the hatcheries at 9:00 at night. And then like doing the science and finding out the lights in my lab automatically turn off at midnight, which I thought he was playing a trick on me. I had just moved, like I had just started my own lab. And suddenly I'm like, why is it dark?
That's really funny.
Yeah. So, and I'm not saying that, yeah. And that dude in the middle, that is Andrew, the obsessed steelhead fisherman, our buddy Joe next to him. Yep. Oh, look, there's Rakeem, another, current graduate student, fisheries guy, and all around like amazing human. Right there, I got to say that Rakeem is not only a great fisheries biologist and graduate student, he is also the founder or co-founder of the PDX Climbers of Color and PDX Hikers of Color groups.
Oh, that's cool.
And is committed to taking people of color out into nature in an encouraging way where those people have often felt discouraged. So he does a lot of really good work on our community, and in addition to all of the great work that he does as a scientist. Which gets back to love, right? Love and not just like romantic love, but like connections. Just like you were talking about at the beginning, Kiki, with like getting to know people. Yeah, you might know that one thing, which is like he's a fisheries biologist, Rakeem. And then it's like, oh, he's also a climber and a hiker. And then you get to know all of these other things. And it's the getting to know people. And honestly, I mean, you know me, I'm an extreme extrovert. So it is the human interaction part of science that I love just as much as the science itself.
So you went from working with fish and being a just fish biologist into working with in the specific questions related to hearing and hearing loss and repairing hair cells. Is there anything like you talked about your conference recently, of otolaryngology, and your recent conference and your trip to Australia? Is there anything recently that is related to the work that you've been doing that you just were like, oh my God, I love this so much?
So the biggest thing that just came out of the conference I was at is, to be honest, one of the one that was in Anaheim last week is one of the biggest breakthroughs in our field in many, many years. And this is something like you might have already covered it in TWIS last week. I'll admit I was coming back for a conference, so I wasn't paying much attention. But it's been in the New York Times, Washington Post, NPR. It's that for the first time ever, multiple research groups on multiple continents have successfully used gene therapy to help restore hearing in a subset of people that were born deaf. This is the first time we have had gene therapy to improve hearing ever.
That's amazing. So this is in mice or in people? This is
in people.
In people.
Yes. This is not a mouse study. This is people that have a mutation in a particular gene called otoferlin. And why the researchers, and there's several different research groups that targeted this particular gene to be the first one to bring to clinical trials for gene therapy for deafness, is because so often when somebody's born deaf, and 1 in 1,000 babies are born with with genetic hearing impairment, but so often it's because their hearing cells, the hair cells in their inner ears, the genetic mutations have caused those cells to degenerate or not form properly. So once that baby is born, the hearing cells are already damaged or destroyed. You would have to grow new ones, and that's a lot harder. Whereas with mutations in this gene called otoferlin, people that have those mutations, they're deaf, they're born deaf, but the cells are all still intact. It's that the hearing cells aren't talking to the nerve cells properly. So the connections are, like, all the cells are there, they're just not connecting. The neurotransmitter's not getting released properly. But the structure's all there. And so that's like the perfect first test case for this genetic gene therapy, because you're restoring function, but the parts were intact before. And it
Yeah,
works.
so that was what I was wondering. So are these reversals or restorations? I know there are sensitive periods for learning how to how to speak, how to see, our nerves and our brains have these periods of time during our development that are kind of set. Then after which the brain is less plastic than it would otherwise be. Um, so is this gene therapy? Are the children hearing? Are they understanding? Are they like, oh, like, what does the restoration consist of?
Yeah, it's still a very small number of people, number of kids. Ultimately, they want to be doing these studies in kids that are like 6 to 12 months old and babies, because like you were saying, that's like right as kids are starting to babble and learn language. They haven't done those studies in kids that young for ethical reasons. Actually, some places they're saying the kids need to be at least, in some countries, I think including the US for now, they're like, the kids in these studies need to be at least, I think it was 7 or 8, to a point where they can actually give their own consent.
Yeah.
In addition to their parents consenting. Now, most of the kids in these studies do have a cochlear implant. So they'll have a cochlear implant on one side, so they have technological restoration of hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're doing the gene therapy in the other ear. But then they can turn off the cochlear implant, basically just turn off the battery.
And the brain goes, I know what's going on.
Right. And call the kid's name, and the kid turns. There was actually one really cute video. It was like a 2 or 3-year-old Chinese boy who they showed after, can't remember exactly how long it was, a couple of months following this single gene therapy administration. They showed him like dancing to actual music, like, because he could hear it. And they had videos of these kids before they would get their gene therapy. Parent would be behind them calling their name, and they don't even turn around. And then 6 weeks after the gene therapy, parent calls the name and they turn. And then they were showing some of them starting to, even the 3, 4, 5-year-olds that got the gene therapy, starting to learn language. Whether or not that language learning is going to be as good as, say, a kid born with normal hearing, probably not, but it was remarkable. So yeah, I'm super excited about those clinical trials, because yeah, we've gotten out of the mice now and gone to people in this case, and it's working.
And I feel like that's where, my love of science really, hits, is the fact that there are good people trying to do really creative things and learn things that can help people, that can help humanity, that can, bring us to a more sustainable, equitable future where, there's so, like, science is full of people who are really working without as much compensation as they should be getting.
Yep.
How hard you work to get grants, and how hard it is to make sure you can keep your lab running, and the papers you have to publish, and how hard it is to get to tenure, and all of the things involved in being a scientist within academia are very difficult, and people do it because they want to ask questions and they have this drive to understand. And then when things like this actually start fruiting, right, where you start seeing results, it comes back and you go, this is why we do it, right? This is why we keep asking the questions. How can we get, or how important do you think it is for people to understand basic science, the more applicable science, the creativity in science? Like, where do you feel like we can help? People are like, I love science. I got great grades in high school, whatever, I read blogs, or I look at it in the news, or, I see there's some TikTok influencers. I love science. That's a science enthusiast, but how do, like, What do you think we need to do to go to the next step? How do we get people to really love science, like to get it?
I'm actually going to back up a little bit and say I would start with just more science enthusiasts, to be honest. I think science, and not just science, but expertise and knowledge in general, has been getting such a bad rap. Suddenly it's like, we can't trust people that have studied this thing for years and years and years and actually have some knowledge. In a lot of cases, it's because of the language that we use in science, right? It's like, well, we think this is likely what's going on based on the research we did, but here's all the caveats, because as scientists, that's how we talk to each other. So I would start with just like more science enthusiasts, more people who are just like, yeah, I think science is cool. I appreciate how science impacts my life, even if I have no interest in being a scientist, or like don't necessarily want to dig into the details of the scientific process. But it's like how science impacts daily life to me. Like everybody has a science story. We are all walking science stories, and to just appreciate our own science stories, right? So like chocolate, and actually how climate change is impacting cacao growing in Africa right now, which is driving chocolate prices up for Valentine's Day. Like that was a big story on NPR today. That gets back to climate science.
Yep.
So it's like
another study, 15% of Americans just cannot accept that climate change is human related. There is a certain segment of the population, but there's a larger segment of the population who just don't understand how it works and haven't heard the right things. But maybe chocolate will get to it. Maybe coffee.
Chocolate and coffee, right? Like these things are so important. Right. I think I was telling you when I got back from the trip to Sydney, Australia in December, which by the way was phenomenal. And
jealous.
I want to go back. I'd never been there before and I totally want to go back. But I was in this little tiny mezcal bar with like 6 of my closest friends and colleagues and like 18 other people crammed into this little tiny standing room only bar off of like some dark alleyway that if you didn't know to go down that alleyway, you'd be like, is this where I die? I've seen this movie.
Yeah.
But the bartenders there weren't just bartenders, which I mean, first of all, bartenders are, I don't mean to like belittle bartenders. Bartenders are often bartenders and confidants and cleaners and like 6 other things at once, bouncers. But these guys were also, and it was guys in this case mostly, were also science communicators.
Yep.
So this is this little tiny mezcal bar, and the bartenders there would go to Mexico and meet the mezcal producers and see the process. And they would come back, and as they're like, hey, do you want to sample this one or this one? They would tell you stories about how the mezcal was made. Like that's science. And so to me, it's not even so much do you get the exactly how the mezcal is being made, or do you appreciate that like I'm drinking science right now. Like this matters and it's tasty.
I love that sourdough bread that you're slicing up, you're eating science. Oh, this beer that I'm drinking right now, I'm drinking science. Yes.
I'm drinking water, I'll admit it, but there is an ethanol molecule on my cup. Thank you, science on top. So exactly.
Yes. And science also, if you're on city water, allows testing of your water and treatment of your water to make sure that it is clean and not full of toxic chemicals or other things. Or we hope.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So, right.
Yeah, it's the science, the application.
Lower communities of color, that hasn't been the case.
Yes.
But yeah, right. But science can do these things. Right. Yeah. Getting back to the whole equity question, or issue. But yeah, it's just, for me, it's just starting with like your science story. Like what do you care about? And then, oh yeah, this is how science connects. But getting a bit deeper, you're talking about people appreciating or really knowing more about science. I think it's the scientific process. It's not the facts. Like knowing a bunch of facts doesn't really matter other than unless you want to win trivia. Like, yeah, it's good for your trivia team. But I mean,
people really love trivia and like to, that's exciting. But yeah, it's science is knowledge and science is process.
Exactly. And I think it's the process, like the troubleshooting and the generating hypotheses and the testing them and the falsifying some and the supporting others. But that it's also a growing, changing process, and that we're building on previous knowledge and shaping that knowledge. And so I think to me, that's really what's so important.
I really am excited about the shaping of knowledge. I think that's one thing that people forget sometimes is that when we find these new things, when there's a new study or when I, there's so many systems in our society that people take for granted that it's people who made them. It's people who make them. It's people with ideas who create them. It's people in cooperation who allow things to exist and move society forward. And science is one of the parts of that. Science is a human endeavor.
Yes, exactly. And as we've often said at Association of Science Communicators now, in large part thanks to your wording, science is a human right.
Science is a human right. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's not just I get to learn it. It's I need to be involved. I can be involved in it. I can have my say in it. My community can have a say in it. I can access the fruits of that knowledge. I can use the technology. I can, all of it is, it, yeah.
Yeah. And not to
us.
go like too deep and like, yeah, philosophical, since that's not usually where I go. But
Stompy.
I know, Stompy, right. But I am getting hopeful. I'm starting to see hints of more of that true, like community engaged science, science that really incorporates Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous communities into generating the questions as well as researching the answers to those questions. And I think that that's so critical. And yeah, and that there's a lot more of it being done rather than like a scientist going into a community and being like, I have this question and I want you to help me collect data to solve this question versus what do you want to know in your community? What are your concerns and how can we work together?
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation with my husband, Marshall, the other day, and I mentioned the idea of strategic communication by scientists that involved going into communities to get to know the communities and ask them what they need in order to inform the research that the scientists do. And he looked at me as if I was crazy. And he was a science major at UC Davis when I was there. The concept, he was like, wait, what?
Well, that's because it didn't involve a flamethrower. If it doesn't involve blowing something up, your husband isn't as interested.
Yeah. But, you know, I think he's a smart person, but the fact that that was a wholly new concept, and he works in marketing, right. He works in communication. But the idea that is like that would be part of what a scientist learns to do and does moving forward he was like, this is big. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, it's that co-creation of knowledge rather than just like the transfer of knowledge. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love talking about science. I love learning about science. It excites me about possibilities. I love sharing science and what I learn.
You think
what I'm
this
curious about?
Episode, which number?
960-ish, something like
exactly, that. Right. So you think you love sharing science, talk about science to the tune of 960 some? Yep.
That's my Valentine to science and to the people for this show. Allie, do you have anything? I've kept you over the hour at this point. So do you have any sonnets for science? Hashtag or
I am past the point of sonnets for science. That's not happening right now.
Or any thoughts and anything that you want to add around this,
just
this whole
that
thing.
I love the theme, and yeah, that it's not just the love of science, but just the love of and appreciation of like again of our own science stories of how science has impacted us. And it doesn't have to be like the big controversial life-changing stuff, right? It can be the mezcal or the beer or the coffee, although like those things can be life-changing. Without my coffee I am dangerous, but just it's what you know that, right?
I know that.
Yes, you know that well, but it's that Yeah, it doesn't have to be the big stuff. It's the little ways that science impacts our lives that I think is so important and so cool. And all of the things that we still just like don't even know.
The more we know, the more we don't know, or the more we know we don't know.
Right. Like I always tell the students working with me that good science answers some questions and leads to more questions.
You know nothing, Jon Snow. It's all about questions. The future is uncertain. Love is uncertain. I mean, everything is, underlined with love, really, if we're working together, cooperating, collaborating, trusting. I mean, that's a key component of it. I think all of it ties in together. And if we can accept uncertainty about love and our lives and the future just a little bit more, maybe we can accept the uncertainty that lies in science.
Ooh, that's deep.
Oh, I go there sometimes.
I know. All right, I think we got to end on that. Just
I got a shovel. I got a pitchfork. No, never mind. I've got a husband with a crowbar,
and a flamethrower.
And a flamethrower. That's right. But it is time to end the show. And Allie, thank you so much for spending Valentine's Eve with me.
Yes, thank you for being my Valentine. Now we should probably each go find our tabby cats because they probably want some Valentine love or at least some Valentine snacks.
Yeah, some treats, some pets.
Yep.
Some purrs, some pets. It'll be wonderful. Do you have any places you want to send people for further information?
Yeah, absolutely. So Association of Science Communicators, sciencecom.org or associationofsciencecommunicators.org. All one word. There we go. Coming up at the Science Talk 24 conference where our theme is, it says there, opening doors. And that's the whole idea is that we want to open the doors of science communication, just throw them wide open, getting at that idea that whether you're a bench scientist, a podcaster, social media influencer, a mezcal bartender, someone giving tours at a boutique chocolate factory, went on an amazing one of those, or not so boutique chocolate factory, but like it's all science communication, all relates to science. The doors are open and we welcome everybody in. So hope that everybody will check out associationofsciencecommunicators.org and come to Science Talk 24 in April, starting virtually the beginning of April with multiple sessions. And then we go live and in person April 11th through 12th here in Portland, Oregon. Also will be live streamed. And one of the things I'm super excited about, speaking of like love of science and all the different ways it can be portrayed, is that this year, the Thursday night of the conference, April 11th, we are doing a science-themed cabaret. And that's going to be at Dante's in Portland, which is better known as like a metal club. So it should be a ton of fun. And we have like science-themed dances and science-themed comedians and science-themed burlesque. Like this should be a ton of fun and honestly like the most Portland thing ever. Because
I love that it's the conference. It's a virtual thing. It's a live thing. We're also doing a science week with all sorts of events out of our little conference bubble.
Yes, we are.
And that's the thing we want to grow. But
exactly. Yeah, it's not just for those that are opening the doors of Science Communicator and coming in, but yeah, the whole Science Week is for anybody getting back to like, I love science, or I like science, or I just happen to think that like I want to see these science comedians, and see how they do, or check out this science themed burlesque act on plants or something. Like it's all going to be awesome. So absolutely, let's do it.
Honestly, science burlesque is so intriguing, and science comedy, yes. I mean, all of it.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yes. I need to take more classes there. Allie, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And joining our audience tonight. It's just been wonderful to hang out with you. I really appreciate the time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Taken.
Yeah, it's always fun. And as probably everybody watching, if you're still out there, can see, yeah, we tend to have a good time. So we probably got a little carried away, but then again, you get carried away with Justin and Blair too, so it's all good.
I do not.
No, never.
Right.
Justin never says.
Never. Carried away? What are you saying?
I know. I actually thought I was pretty well behaved compared to your usual co-host.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
Maybe, sort of, kind of, maybe not.
I would, yeah. I mean, there were no curse words. You acted in a very professional manner. You might have given out one of my personal secrets, but that's okay.
Yeah, girl, you can edit that out. All right.
All right. If you want to hang up now, it's fabulous and fine with me. I need to do our outro, and I have a lot of things to say.
Gonna go grade some stuff.
So go grade things. I hope your paper gets accepted where you submit it, and I will talk to you again soon.
All right. Catch you later, girl.
Good night.
Bye, night.
And everybody here, thank you so much for being here for the show. Thank you for being a part of the audience. Happy Valentine's Day. I love you. TWIS loves you. I love getting to talk to you. I hope you enjoyed the show and all the things that we had to discuss tonight. As we end the show, I do have specific people to thank for all the things that end up being done to support the show and make it happen. Fada, thank you so much for your support in show notes and the social media. Gord Arnlor, thank you for helping to keep our chat rooms very happy and nice, great places for everyone to hang out. Identity 4, thank you for recording the show. And Rachel, thank you for editing. And as usual, of course, I need to thank our Patreon sponsors. That's you, the people who make this show possible, the patrons of the show. Aaron Anathema, Arthur Kepler, Craig Potts, Mary Gertz, Teresa Smith, Richard Badge, Bob Coles, Kent Northcote, George Chorus, Pierre Belazar, John Ratnaswamy, Carl Kornfeld, Chris Wozniak, Vegard Chefstad, Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Style. Oh my gosh, Allie Coffin. She does support the show. Reagan, Shubrew, Sarah Forfar, Don Mundis, P.I.G., Stephen Albaran, Daryl Myshak, Andrew Swanson, Fred S104, Sky Luke, Paul Runovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack, Brian Carrington, David E. Youngblood, Sean Clarence, Lab, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Steve Leesman, a.k.a. Z, McKen Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Clemmy Day, G. Burton, Lattimore, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Paul Lewis, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Rick Ramus, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, Lon Makes, E.O., Adam Mishkan, Kevin Parrish, Aaron Luthen, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul D. Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Pecoraro, and Tony Steele. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of your support of TWIS. Couldn't do it without you. If anyone out there is interested in helping to support TWIS in an ongoing fashion, I do hope that you will go to twis.org and click on the Patreon link, because I'd love to have you and your support through Patreon. All right, now I say all the things that would normally be shared between me and another host on next week's show. Justin will be back, so I'll get to do this back and forth with him. Don't miss it. We will be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live from our Facebook, Twitch, YouTube channels. You can also find information of those links at twis.org/live. You want to listen to us as a podcast? I hope you're subscribed. If you're not subscribed, you can look for This Week in Science wherever you like podcasts. And if you listen to the podcast, you can share it with your friends. And that would really be an amazing thing for you to do. Share your things. That's awesome. For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories are going to be available on our website, thanks to Rachel, and also on the YouTube channel and all that, thanks to Fada. So go to twis.org, where you can also sign up for our newsletter. I think I sent one. There will be more. There will be. You can email us, contact us directly, host, come to us, tell us what you need, what you like. My email is Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com. Justin is twistminion at TWIS@gmail.com. Blair is blairbaz@twis.org. And you need to put TWIS somewhere in the subject line so your email doesn't get spam filtered into a free-running female mouse out doing what she wants to do in the great outdoors, or a lost fibroblast. Whatever. You can ping us on the socials. We're usually TWIS Science, TWISCIENCE on the social media accounts. I'm also at Dr. Kiki. There's at Jacksonfly, at Blair's Menagerie. Look for us various places. This Week in Science is usually a good thing to do. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you want us to cover, or if you want to suggest somebody to help me out on one of these weeks when I need another host to talk about science with, let me know. I'd really, really like that. And I and Justin will be back again next week for more great science news. We hope that you'll join us again. And of course, if you have learned anything from the show tonight, please remember, it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.